My name is Daniel Cole, and today I'm sharing a story about the day everything I thought I knew about family shattered, and how one unexpected man changed what that word meant forever. Stay with me till the end, because what happened next will make you question what blood ties really mean. Before we dive in, take a quick second to follow and support the channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your one message keeps me pushing to bring more stories that hit close to the heart. They arrived the morning after Victor Hayes' funeral, dressed for celebration instead of mourning. I'd barely buried the only person who had ever treated me like a son, and here came Eleanor and Robert, the same two people who had vanished when I was 15. I'm 39 now. A month ago, I became the owner of a $9.2 million construction supply company and an 18-room residence in Alder County. Victor, my guardian, left it all to me. He raised me when my biological parents decided I wasn't worth keeping. They stood in my stone-paved entryway like they'd never left. Eleanor smiled that same practiced smile. "We're still responsible for you, you know," she said, brushing her sleeve like a queen dismissing dust. I didn't respond. My jaw locked tight. Robert gave a thin grin, the kind people wear before pretending nothing happened. "Son," he said softly, "we know this is a tough time. We're here now. You don't have to do this alone." I almost laughed, but the sound died in my throat. Just then, Nolan Price, Victor's legal counsel, appeared, sharp suit, calm face, briefcase in hand. "Good morning," he said, adjusting his glasses. "You must be the Drakes. I can't say I'm surprised to see you, but I am disappointed." Robert's face hardened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means Victor predicted this exact moment," Nolan replied evenly. "We'll reconvene once you bring proper documentation. Until then, this discussion is over." He turned to me. "Daniel, I'll need a word in Victor's study." My hands were shaking, but I followed him. Behind us, Eleanor clutched Robert's arm like she might collapse. Victor had prepared for everything, even this. And for once I was glad someone had. What would you do if the parents who abandoned you suddenly came back for your inheritance? Share your response below. I didn't grow up in luxury. My childhood wasn't marble floors or soft carpets. It was Fairhaven, a small town with chipped paint and a door that squeaked like it was begging for oil. Back then, life felt simple. Robert worked long hours at a textile factory, and Eleanor trimmed neighbors' hair right in our kitchen. On Thursdays, we ate spaghetti, watched wrestling on a compact television, and sat on metal stools pretending that was enough. Then Robert found blackjack. It started as laughter around a kitchen table with his card group, tossing $20 bills like confetti. Before long, the games turned into overnight casino trips. He'd come home smelling like stale cologne, swearing everything was about to turn around. It never did. Eleanor stopped pretending after a while. The blinds stayed shut, the door stayed locked, and one morning, she just didn't get up. The fridge held a half-empty milk jug and a bottle of mustard. That was dinner. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know how. Then one December morning, the silence hit differently. No breakfast, no voices, no smell of tea. Their room was gutted, closet empty, drawers open, air cold. On the kitchen table sat a soggy bowl and a note. "Daniel, we can't do this anymore. Your guardian will take care of you." Eleanor, that was it. No goodbye, just my name and their escape plan. I remember sitting on the front steps, watching gray clouds slide over the roofs, waiting for someone, anyone, to notice. No one did. By afternoon, I was still there, backpack at my feet. When night came, I lay on the couch with a blanket and the hallway light on, too afraid to close my eyes. That was the day my parents left. But it was also the day Victor Hayes began to find me. That first night alone stretched forever. Every car passing the window sounded like a rescue that never came. Every creak in the floorboards made me sit upright, waiting for voices that didn't exist. By sunrise, I was still awake, and still alone. The next few days blurred together. I skipped class, lived on dry cereal until the box went empty, and ignored the knocking at the door until the landlord came shouting about unpaid rent. I told him my parents were out of town. He didn't believe a word, said he'd call child services. The guidance officer from school reached out before that happened. She called the number written in Eleanor's note, the one that led to Victor Hayes. A few days later, a black sedan rolled up in front of our peeling rental. That car changed everything. If your parents left you with only a note, could you ever forgive them? Share your response below. The engine idled for a long time before the man inside stepped out, tall, composed, not a wrinkle on his gray suit or the black coat he wore over it. He looked more like a CEO than family. "You're Daniel, right?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "I'm Victor Hayes. Pack what matters. The rest will follow." No hug, no small talk, just calm instructions, like checking into a hotel. I filled a duffel with a few clothes, a photo of Eleanor and me from a school trip, and my pocket music player. The cereal box sat half full on the counter, but I couldn't touch it. It felt wrong, like leaving fingerprints on a life that had already ended. We drove in silence, leaving Fairhaven's cracked streets behind. No radio, no questions. Just the steady hum of the highway. 5 hours later, the car turned up a long circular drive lined with lamps. At the top stood a house so big it looked like a hotel, stone walls, towering columns, doors heavy, enough to stop the wind. An older woman answered before we rang the bell. "Mr. Hayes," she said stiffly, "this is Daniel. He'll stay in the East Wing." Then he walked off. No further explanation. The East Wing room felt unreal. My own bathroom, a queen bed, a desk with drawers that actually closed, and windows overlooking a pond. I sat on the bed for 10 minutes straight, trying to believe it was mine. Dinner that night was just the two of us at a table meant for 12, roasted chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes. A cook had made it, but I never saw them. "Thank you," I said. He nodded once, handed me a paper. "Your schedule. Breakfast at 6:30, study hour at 7, no food in your room, lights out by 10. "Are you serious?" He gave me a quiet, steady look. "You need structure. You've lived with chaos long enough." I didn't argue, just slammed the door upstairs louder than I had to. The next few weeks I tested him, broke rules, hid snacks, ignored study time. He never yelled, never punished. Instead, he shifted the pieces around me, moved me into a smaller room without a TV, added chores, cut back privileges. I thought he was trying to break me, so I doubled down. After one blow-up over drawing classes, he came home carrying a violin. "Try this," he said. "Maybe you'll like it better." When I failed algebra that semester, he didn't ground me. He hired a personal instructor and moved my desk into Victor's study so he could watch me focus. He wasn't warm. He never said, "I'm proud of you." But one day I left a messy school innovation fair project on the counter. When I came home, it was fixed, painted, glued, perfect. No note, no mention, just done. That was how he showed care, silent effort instead of words. Little by little, I stopped rebelling, woke up early, kept to the routine, not out of fear, but because he proved he'd stay. One night, curiosity got me. "Why did you take me in?" I asked. He said quietly, "Because no one else would. And you don't throw family away." I wanted to ask why my biological parents didn't believe that, but I couldn't. By the end of that first year, I'd learned 3 things about Victor Hayes. He despised laziness, valued preparation, and trusted no one who smiled too easily. His story was legendary in Briar Hill. His father left him a single work truck and a handful of loyal clients. From that, he built Hayes Industrial Supplies, turning it into 20 stores, a warehouse, and 100 employees. He called it simply the business. He brought me along to supplier visits, quarterly reviews, and conference chamber meetings. I'd sit in the back with a notepad while he grilled managers like a coach dissecting a game. On the way home, he'd quiz me. Who lied, who hesitated, who really knew their numbers. When I turned 18, he enrolled me in an academy with Latin classes and cafeteria meals that served grilled fish on Fridays. My first week, I wore the wrong shoes and ate alone every day after. At home, I told him, I hate it. I don't fit in. Let me transfer. He looked up from his papers, voice steady. You don't need to belong. You just need to rise above. I didn't realize it then, but that line would shape everything that came after. At the academy, I never fit in. I didn't sound like them, didn't dress like them, and half the time I didn't even understand their words. When I told Victor Hayes I wanted to quit, he didn't hesitate. I don't raise quitters, he said flatly. You'll stay. That's easy for you to say, I shot back. You're not the one getting laughed at. He didn't even blink. You don't need to belong, he replied. You just need to rise above. I slammed the door that night, furious, but I stayed. Over time, the grades improved. He brought in tutors, made me rewrite essays until my pen hurt, even bought me noise cancelling headphones so I could block out the world and focus. We clashed again when it came to college. I told him I wanted to study music production, recording, mixing, creating. The violin he'd given me had become my only escape. He shook his head. Not yet. You earn the right to dream after you build something first. That's not your choice, I snapped. His eyes hardened. I spent 10 years making sure you'd never have to beg for security. You want to throw it away chasing a hobby? It's not a hobby, I shouted. I think stability isn't free, he fired back. You can be inspired, or you can be prepared. We didn't speak for 3 days, but when I finally filled out my university applications, I checked management degree under my intended major. Not because he scared me, because he was right, and I hated that he was. When I turned 18, Nolan Price, the legal counsel, came by the house holding a thick folder. Victor stood with his arms crossed. Just need your signature here, Nolan said, tapping a page. What is it? Adoption papers, Victor said simply. My chest tightened. Seriously? It's already done, he said. I just didn't change your name. Why not? In case your biological parents ever come back, I want no confusion about what they gave up. I signed without speaking. He gave one small nod and left the room. No hug, no smile, but I didn't need one. That single nod said everything. Which matters more to you, the name you're born with or the one someone earns? Share your response below. After Nolan left, the house felt unusually quiet. That moment closed one chapter and opened another. A few months later, Victor started missing meetings. Then came the test results. Cancer. He didn't tell me right away, just quietly rearranged his schedule around chemotherapy and doctor visits. When I found out, he was sitting at his desk with a spreadsheet. The average is 10 months, he said. I'm aiming for 12. He fought like it was a business plan, treatment dates lined up beside quarterly reviews. Even when the pain got bad, he still showed up to every board review. When he finally passed, I handled the funeral the only way he would have approved. Simple, clean, no speeches. Just a framed insignia, an instrumental melody he liked, and decent bourbon for the guests. The next morning, Nolan delivered the estate file. $9 million in shares, Hayes Industrial Supplies, Hayes Manor, everything. I sat at the long table in the corporate tower, hands shaking, waiting for executives to join. But when the door opened, it wasn't them. It was Eleanor and Robert. They looked older, smaller. Her hair was thin and dyed too dark. His limp was new, but the arrogance was the same. Daniel, Eleanor smiled like we were at a family brunch. You look good. I said nothing. Robert stepped forward. We've kept up from a distance. Victor did well with you. His voice made it sound like I'd gone off to a summer camp, not been abandoned. Why are you here? I asked quietly. Eleanor blinked. We thought it was time to reconnect, start over. Then Robert said the line that made my blood run cold. We're still your legal guardians, technically. We figured we could help you manage the estate. Before I could respond, Nolan stood up, calm, composed. "Let's reconvene tomorrow," he said. "Bring whatever paperwork you believe supports that claim. Today's meeting is adjourned." Eleanor looked startled. "But we drove all the way." "It's not a discussion," Nolan interrupted. "Tomorrow, with proof." They gathered their things. Before leaving, Robert stepped close and slipped a contact slip into my palm. "Reach out whenever you're ready," he said. "We just want to rebuild." They walked out like two people finishing a chore, not like the ones who'd walked out on a child. I looked down at the card. Cheap ink, no tit. Lay. Just his name. Leonard Drake. Rebuild, I thought. Like they'd knocked over a toy tower, not a childhood. Nolan studied me. "You all right?" I nodded, but I wasn't, not even close. "If the people who abandoned you showed up years later asking for trust, would you give them a chance, or walk away? Share your thoughts below." I don't even know why I agreed to dinner. Curiosity, maybe. It definitely wasn't forgiveness. We met at a small Italian restaurant off Brook Avenue, the kind of place Victor Hayes would have considered far too ordinary. They were already seated when I arrived. Eleanor stood, expecting a hug. I didn't move. She sat back down. Robert tried to smile. "Glad you came," he said softly. "Let's just finish this," I replied, sliding into the booth. The waiter came. I ordered water. They both ordered wine. The conversation was small and stale. Illnesses, job losses, a house fire, relatives I didn't remember. I nodded, but didn't listen. My eyes stayed fixed on the clock behind the bar. Finally, Eleanor folded her hands, her tone rehearsed. "Daniel, this isn't easy, but we're in trouble." There it was. Robert jumped in right on cue. "We've made mistakes, but we never stopped thinking about you." 15 years of thinking? I asked. "Not one call?" He blinked, caught off guard. Eleanor reached for sympathy. "We were ashamed. We didn't know how to come back. But now that Victor's gone..." "Now that I'm vulnerable," I said. "Perfect timing." Her eyes welled. I didn't flinch. "We just need a little help," Robert said. "That's all." "How much?" 80,000, mortgage and medical bills. Maybe a position at the company later. I laughed, loud, raw, the kind that made nearby tables pause. "You left a note and disappeared. You didn't call, you didn't check in, not once, except when social services forced you to." The air tightened. Robert's jaw locked. "You don't know what we went through." "Yeah, I do," I said. "You were gambling away dinner money while Mom hid in the dark. I was there, remember?" Eleanor dabbed her eyes. "We were broken. We thought Victor could give you more, and he did. Look at you. He raised you well." "You don't get to take credit for that," I said quietly. Silence stretched between us until Robert finally muttered, "So you'll hold a grudge forever?" I placed a 50 on the table. "No, I'm just done pretending we're family." Then I left. I didn't drive to the corporate tower afterward. I went straight to Hayes Manor and sat in the car for nearly an hour, the engine ticking in the cold. Something felt off. They hadn't come unplanned. They'd come prepared. Inside, the house was silent except for the faint hum of the alarm control panel. I walked through the stone-paved entryway into Victor's study. The familiar scent of leather and polish hung in the air. There was one drawer I'd never opened, the bottom left, marked DC Personal. It was locked. 10 minutes of searching led me to the key, taped under a shelf behind a stack of trade journals. Typical Victor, planning for every betrayal. When I opened it, the truth stared back. Thick folders filled with legal records, letters, receipts, and internal inquiry files. Every move my parents had ever made. On top sat notarized adoption papers, airtight and dated. They hadn't vanished quietly. They'd tried coming back, 3 times. The first time, months after leaving, they sent a lawyer demanding custody. Victor stopped it instantly. The second time, they offered to sell their parental rights for $80,000. The third was worse. They tried to reach me through my guidance officer at the Scholastic Institute, pretending to be a concerned family. Victor found out within days and shut it down, but the reports went further. For other families, similar tactics. They'd posed as long-lost relatives, cashing in on grief wherever they could. Eleanor and Robert Drake weren't just careless parents, they were professional cons. I sat back in Victor's chair, the file heavy in my lap. They hadn't come for me. They came for what he left behind. The next morning, I walked into Nolan Price's office, carrying that same folder. Dark suit, no tie, no emotion. They were already there, with a lawyer this time. Older man, gray ponytail, teeth too sharp to trust. Robert tried the warm tone again. "Morning, son. Thanks for meeting." I didn't answer. I handed the folder to Nolan and took my seat. He opened it, scanned a few pages, then looked up. Voice steady, unshaken. "Well," he said, "this saves us a great deal of time." The other lawyer leaned forward, ready to speak. The older lawyer leaned back in his chair, voice oiled with confidence. "I'm going to assume you're referring to some previous correspondence," he said smoothly. Before he could continue, Nolan Price cut in, calm but sharp. "I'm referring to blackmail attempts, falsified claims, and court-proven abandonment. Would you like copies?" The man raised both palms. "Let's not get aggressive," Nolan smiled. "I'm not aggressive. I'm precise. Victor Hayes taught me that." Eleanor's face was drained of color. Robert shifted uncomfortably. Nolan spread the documents across the polished table one by one. "Here's your client's offer to sell their parental rights for money. Here's the school report confirming their unauthorized contact. Here are the internal inquiry files from the investigators. And here," he tapped the final page, "is the notarized adoption order, binding and complete." The room went silent. Finally, Nolan leaned forward. "You came here claiming legal standing. Tell me, what exactly did you plan to show the court as evidence? This?" He slid a faded note across the table, the one they'd left on the kitchen table 15 years ago. My name in their handwriting. Proof of everything. The lawyer turned to them, stunned. "You didn't tell me any of this?" Neither spoke. Eleanor started crying softly. Robert stared at the floor. Nolan stood. "Unless you have a legitimate claim, I suggest you leave before this becomes a discussion about fraud." No one moved. I rose, tucked the folder under my arm, and met my father's eyes. "You tried to sell your son for $80,000, and now you want a seat at the table?" His gaze fell. I turned to Nolan. "Are we done?" He nodded once. "We're done." We walked out of the conference chamber like we'd detonated something behind us. They stayed frozen in their chairs while Nolan and I stepped into the elevator. When the doors closed, he opened his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Victor wanted you to have this," he said. "He wrote it years ago, told me to give it to you after they showed up." My name, Daniel Cole, was written in Victor's familiar handwriting across the front. No date, no return address. Back at Hayes Manor, the sun was bleeding orange through the trees when I sat at his desk. My hands didn't shake, but my chest did. I opened it. "Daniel, if you're reading this, they finally did what I expected. People like them don't return for love, they return for leverage. I kept everything, the lies, the letters, the scams, so you'd never doubt their motives. You're protected. The adoption is final. The will carries a no-challenge clause. If they contest it, everything transfers to the Alder Youth Foundation. Don't get emotional. Stick to facts. You've always had what you need. They will come for the money. Not for you, Victor." I sat there for a long time, staring at the edge of the desk. He'd seen it all coming. He hadn't just protected me, he'd armed me. Downstairs, Nolan was still by the door, sipping tea. "Are they still here?" I asked. He nodded. "Lobby. Sitting like they're waiting for a train that has already left." "Good." I took the elevator down, holding the letter in one hand and the file in the other. They stood when I approached. Eleanor opened her mouth. "Don't," I said quietly. "You had your chance." Robert frowned. "Daniel, not in public." "No, let's do it now," I said, stepping closer. "You didn't lose a son. You gave one away. You chose to walk out. Now you want a share of a life you never built." "We're trying to make things right," Eleanor began. "This isn't about right or wrong," I interrupted. "It's about what's finished. And this," I gestured between us, "is finished." Two security personnel appeared beside the desk, just as Nolan had planned. I turned to them. "Escort them out. They're not guests." Robert's expression twisted. "You'll be sorry for this." I met his eyes. "No, I won't." Eleanor cried again, quietly, without pleading this time, as the guards led them out through the glass doors. I didn't watch. I turned back to the elevator, gripping Victor's letter like it weighed 10 pounds. He was gone, but even from the grave, he'd kept his promise: truth, protection, and proof that I was never alone. Eleanor clutched her purse like it was the only thing she still owned. "We raised you," she said weakly. "You wouldn't exist without us." I stared back, calm and steady. "You left a note and vanished. That's not parenting. That's running." Tears slid down her cheeks, maybe real, but they didn't reach me. I'd seen better performances in a school play. Robert's tone snapped. "He turned you against us, made you think we were monsters." "No," I said, voice flat. "He didn't need to. I remember everything on my own." Eleanor stepped forward, brushing her hand along the doorframe like she might push past me. I moved in front of her. "Cross that line," I said, "and I press charges tonight." She froze. "We just want to talk, face to face, like a family. You made that impossible the day you dropped me at Victor Hayes's door and disappeared." Robert's face twisted. "You think money makes you better than us?" I pointed at the security camera above the entryway. "Every word's recorded. You want to keep digging this hole, go ahead." That flicker in his eyes, recognition. The game had changed. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You'll die alone in that house, choking on your money. No one will be there." I looked him straight in the eye. "Victor Hayes raised me. He stayed. You ran. Your DNA, not family." Behind me, a light blinked on the wall, the alarm control panel. Signal sent. The police were on their way. "You brought this on yourself," Eleanor said softly. "No," I replied. "You brought this on when you traded love for convenience." Blue lights washed through the front windows. Two patrol vehicles slid quietly up the driveway. "Evening," one of the officers said as he stepped beside me. "These individuals from the report?" "Yes," I said. "Second and final warning." They didn't resist. The officers guided them down the steps like closing-time drunks, tired, stubborn, still too proud to look back. I didn't follow. I didn't speak. I just shut the door. For the first time in months, the weight in my chest loosened, like someone had finally cut the rope. 6 months later, life had steadied into something new. I kept Hayes Industrial Supplies running just the way Victor would have wanted. Clean books, tight numbers, no waste. But I also added my own touch. A new logo, online ordering, updated branding. Now our tin. Rucks deliver across 3 states. The website's live, and every storefront still carries his name, Hayes Industrial Supplies, sharper and prouder than ever. But it wasn't enough to just preserve what he built. I needed to pass it forward. So I launched the Hayes Renewal Trust, a charitable fund for kids like me. The ones left behind, aged out, forgotten. Turns out, there are far more of us than people think. Now I get letters, emails from teachers, social workers, and kids in shelters. Some start the same way. I was that kid once. Every message I read aloud in Victor's study, just like I used to read my report cards to him. Nolan Price still handles the paperwork, but he's not my lawyer anymore. He's family. One evening after a board review, we shared a quiet drink. He said, "Victor Hayes was the coldest man I ever met, except when it came to you." I smiled. Yeah, he didn't say much, but he didn't need to. Nolan nodded. You were the only one who never disappointed him. That stuck with me. A week later, I was cleaning the attic when I found a box labeled in Victor's handwriting. DC. Keepaw inside was a worn wooden keepsake box, the corners frayed. I opened it. Old report cards, a cracked school innovation fair trophy, a concert ticket stub I'd begged him to buy, a photo, me, braces and all, beside him on a fishing trip, both smiling like the world was simple. Underneath was a folded sheet of paper, typed. One line. You were never my burden. You were my redemption. I read it twice before closing the box. Then I set it on the top shelf where nothing else would ever sit above it. My biological parents never came back. The court injunction was held. Their silence is the most honest thing they've ever given me. Sometimes late at night, I wonder what life would have been if Victor Hayes's black sedan never pulled into that broken driveway. If I'd gone into the system, bounced between homes, turned bitter. But those thoughts fade fast, because most days I'm focused on one thing, becoming the man he raised me to be. Steady, grounded, built for the long haul. Blood doesn't define family. Loyalty does. Family is the one who stays when you're broken and keeps showing up until you can stand on your own again. Victor Hayes wasn't my father by birth. He was my father by choice, and that made all the difference. Do you believe blood matters more than loyalty? Or is family the ones who stay when it's hardest? Share your answer below and support and stay connected for more stories that remind us what real love looks like.